What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Healthspan Academy. I'm your host, Craig Shearhart, and joining me today is Matt Torres, who is a coach of some high-level athletes. He started with a bachelor's from Central Michigan University, where he played some varsity football as a wide receiver. He worked a couple of years as a sales manager and then pretty much went into fitness full-time. He's been co-owner and head coach of North Naples CrossFit since 2013. The past 4 years, he's been head coach at Brute Strength Training, and he's trained some high-level athletes, including some games athletes, Dallin Pepper, Phil Toon, Fisa Gaffi, Emma Carey, and James Sprague. So today is all about how Matt makes people super fit. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get this thing going.
Likewise, man. So I want to start this off with how things started. So you were a football player kind of in college. Was that like your main jam growing up? Did you play a mix of sports, or what did athletics look like in your household?
Definitely, man. I had a lot of sports. So baseball was the first sport.
Oh, cool. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
What position?
Yeah. I was a pitcher, like a southpaw, and
Nice.
yeah. I went I had some offers at college, but ended up going in a different direction. But yeah, it's kind of as far as it went. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, man. When I was in high school, I decided stick with football, basketball, and track. Right?
Nice.
A lot of explosive sports there.
Yeah.
And I had a love to the progress of improvement. And I was surrounded by a lot of great coaches during that time. Nice. That influenced me positively. They coached me positively. And it basically felt like I didn't have a limit to my growth. Yeah. So, that flourished. I was lucky enough to play, college football at Central Michigan.
Nice.
And then from there, I got to love to help people. And like the most basic term is like, you find that you enjoy helping people. And, I love sport. I love every aspect of sport.
Yeah.
I can sit in front of my TV and watch any competition and I'll get hooked on it instantly.
That's awesome.
And so, it kind of flourished from there. One thing led into another, and where we are today. I'm very fortunate to have the athletes that I have and be surrounded with them every day, and the coaches I have, and my members at the gym, and everything. And
sweet.
It just flows very nicely on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis now.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about how CrossFit kind of came in your life. Was it like similar stuff you were doing in football training? Was it like buddies on the team introduce you? How did you specifically get into the sport?
It actually started when I finished my last season in football. I knew one thing: I didn't want to play any more football. I was plagued with a lot of injuries during that time for many reasons. But the other thing was I was missing the competitive aspect, and I didn't know where to get it from. I had a buddy that reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you should definitely come by and try this. I feel like you'd be really good because you're strong, right?" Yeah. Naturally, they thought I was strong just because I played football, and I found CrossFit through them.
Cool.
And from there, I like to understand how things work. Yeah. Right. It's not when I watch something, I want to discover why it's working that way. What makes it most efficient. How can I make it better? Really is like the other thing is, from there, as you mentioned, I was doing sales, and as I was working out at this gym, I asked the owner, I'm like, how do I start a gym? Like, cause it looks like you're doing really, really well. You run classes very well. Like, I love coming in here every day. And we were lucky enough to, have him show us the way to do it. And then from there, we get into, this motion where it's like, it goes from running a gym to being coached in the sport of CrossFit. Yeah. And then naturally, one thing leads into another, and I keep that same mindset of just wanting to understand and wanting to learn, and like never be complacent with the two of them. Yeah. And again, it just kind of like gracefully got me where I am today.
That's sweet, man. Yeah. Lifelong learning. That seems like the success commonality in most people that are doing well, whatever their discipline is.
For sure.
Yeah. So when you got into CrossFit, was it like core CrossFit programming? Did you dabble with CrossFit football at all?
No. football and CrossFit, they're like, at this point in time, I don't know how it is now, but they would butt heads. It's like, it's fairly difficult to get a strength coach that is really, really good at getting a lot of big name athletes, strong and fast and quick, and being able to move fast for 6 to 8 seconds at a time, and then get a 45-second rest and repeat. And that's not how CrossFit is, having the two, learning from football and CrossFit, it was a good learning period. It's like a big bell curve where it's like, okay, we got to squat to a certain depth now. We got to be able to move 60 to 80% of our 1 rep max pretty consistently, and we have to be able to move, and this is the big thing, is like breathe hard and then move a barbell. And that's where the two start to clash. One discipline is 100% recovered, move quick. The other one is sometimes, but not always, aerobically based.
Fair enough. We used to program a little CrossFit Football, the John Welborn stuff, back when that was a thing.
I do remember that.
It was pretty cool. It's fun. It was like just kind of more power based and kind of more biased towards the football stuff. I was just curious about that. So 2015, or 2013, I guess, you opened the gym, started coaching. What are the biggest changes you'd say? Like if you could go back and visit Matt in 2013, what would you tell him about coaching?
Yeah, honestly, like I'm embarrassed with the way I used to do things. Like honestly, man, like I look back at the like my own technique and my own form. And then also, the way I used to say things. And so,
the sport was so new back then. I feel like everybody was pretty green. Like people just like literally figuring stuff up on the go. And so I feel like a lot of people are in that boat.
For sure. The one thing that I would tell myself would be this is, it's not just throwing darts at a wall and choosing workouts that you think are fun, or doing more and more volume and more intensity. It truly looks more like a normal season of any sport. There's an off season, there's a post season, there's a build up, there's a peak. There's cycles, macros and microcycles built into there as well. And for the majority of time, when you're writing workouts for athletes, it doesn't look like they're doing CrossFit. Right. And this is how you progress better. And it's how you create longevity in the sport for these athletes, and you keep them healthy. And so if I could go back in time and tell myself that would be it. And I think that would help me as number one, an athlete when I was trying to do well in the sport of CrossFit. And then number two, the coach, when I was slowly trying to piece everything together.
I love that. I feel like that's a similar story with just about everybody in the first find CrossFit is more. And I need to work out 8 times a day and do what Rich does and all that stuff.
Right.
So I actually want to talk more about the season. I like that you brought that up. But first I want to talk about when you first start working with an athlete, what do those first conversations look like? What type of assessments are you doing, programming? How do you start at what kind of optimal volume, or how do you start to solve those kind of variables, and then recovery? Just talk me through a bit of that, how that kind of starts out.
For sure. So the assessment part is super important. If I get an athlete, their age within the sport is important. Whatever type of injuries or limitations they may have is also important. It starts off with a general assessment, and then it goes in so many different routes depending on those factors that I just mentioned. Once we discover, and what I do, I think it's very basic. We focus on their biggest priorities and what is their biggest obstacle on the way that's not allowing them to move on to the next step. So if it's an athlete that has done the CrossFit Open and they haven't made it to quarterfinals, what are their limitations? If it's one that's from quarterfinals and can't make it to semis, what's that? And so if we figure out the limitations and we prioritize those in their training, first in their training, when they're they have the most energy, they have the most focus, they're typically not starving at that time either, as far as like being hungry for food. Right.
Yeah.
We put the focus on that. And, from there, it's progressing them through. So an example would be like, if an athlete needs to be strong,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to put their strength as number one. And they're not going to be doing strength under any fatigue at all. Right. Mm-hmm. So it allows their body to adapt to getting strong.
Yeah. That's super smart.
And then from there, I'm going to give them rest about 2 to 3 hours throughout the middle of the day. And then we can do their conditioning piece after. Right. Now, if you take the opposite of that, an athlete that's a little bit more anaerobically built, then we're going to do conditioning in the morning time. So it's like, that is as basic as it can get, but mm-hmm. that's where everything begins.
Yeah.
And then you have to be able to adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
Right. So, a lot of coaches have the ability to say, I can get this athlete stronger.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the perfect linear template to do that.
Yeah.
Oftentimes with CrossFit, it can't really happen truly in the way that you write it out.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to say, okay, this adjustments need to be made. It needs to be created.
Yeah.
In order to continue their progress moving forward.
There's always a trade-off. You get those athletes who are just specialists, right? And then come with the crazy engine and just like their strength. At what point do you decide they're strong enough, right? I guess that's kind of like what that game you're kind of constantly playing, right?
Yeah. So you decide when, they've achieved that current level. So an example would be, if I have an athlete that's an open level athlete and they're, a male that's snatching 155 pounds. If they need to make it into quarterfinals, typically they need to be at like a 185 or higher.
Yeah.
Right. So it's all right. So your goal this year is to make it to quarterfinals. So your snatch needs to be a $185. Your clean and jerk needs to be this. Your rowing capacity, you need to be able to have these skills, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say now they've entered into the quarterfinals, and if they're snatching 185, specifically this year, they wouldn't have been able to do event number 5, which was row, burpee, box jump, and then 10 snatches at 185 for the male.
Yeah, true.
So now it's like, okay, you want to make it into semis, you're going to have to snatch. It's going to be a pretty big jump, but you're going to have to snatch close to like 280 plus.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the next thing we need to work for.
Yeah.
And as we start to reach those new goals, it becomes even more like acute. Like an example would be, we take an open level athlete and we say, you just got to, we got to get better at all these things.
Mm-hmm.
You take a games level athlete and you say, we got to fix these holes. And it's usually like a couple of things like here and there.
Yeah.
So that we're performing better across the board.
Mm-hmm.
And we're having scores like on average within the top 15, the next year within the top 10, the following year within the top 5. In a perfect world, that's what we would hope for.
Yeah. I love that. Very cool. So you talked a little bit about training splits in the day and training volume. Is that always the case? Do you always give a bit of a midday break, maybe mobility recovery, eat, or how much of their day is like written out for them from you?
Yeah, it depends who the person is.
Yeah.
So if you have someone that, let's say it's a teen athlete, they typically have school.
Mm-hmm.
And so majority of the time, they're only going to do one training session per day.
Yeah.
School plus responsibilities with the family and then whatever extracurricular that they're doing.
Yeah.
If it's someone that's no longer in school and so they have a job, now we have to account for that. Mm-hmm. Right. So in that scenario, it's typically one session. And as a coach, we have to be able to be listening to the results that they're putting inside of their training. Mm-hmm. So we got to hear things like, I barely had time to finish this. Yeah. And so I had to pick and choose one or the other. And if there's a consistency in that, then it's like, okay, less volume. Back.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
If they're like reaching out to you and they're like, hey, I've got more time in my day. Is there any areas that I can start to improve upon? Perfect. Let's add another session into it.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, it's like, you got to see in their notes as well. If they're saying things like, I'm exhausted, I'm starving while I'm training, It was so hard for me to pull myself out of bed and get myself in the gym. Like I have like zero energy to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a much deeper underlying issue in there as far as like some sort of fatigue getting kicked in.
Yeah.
But then you just got to be able to adjust and ask the appropriate questions, of course. Like
send them the right place if they need it.
Yeah. And then you decide what volume they need and what volume they don't.
Yeah. Love that. So when you talk about programming and adjustments, stuff like that, how much of the programming is like core to brute strength and how much is individualized, or is it all individualized? There's a kind of a mix between the two.
So when it comes to my programming and the one-on-one programming with brute, so the individualized remote programming, it's all created by that coach specifically. So what I do and what Coach Dom does, Coach DC, Coach L, Dex, Joey, everyone on staff, it's all up to them.
Okay.
And then there's the other side of brute that has the template stuff where it's like, that's similar to like, Mayhem templated and like CompTrain and Proven and all that.
Yeah. Fair enough. So pretty much everybody you work with has got their whole program customized start to finish
by the coach.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so, and then it's up to that coach to program the way they see fit. For some coaches. And I had this conversation with Ben Bergeron, and he was like, sometimes I don't program for my athletes until the morning of. And he's like, I come to realize that I need specific data points and specific questions to be answered to know that what I'm about to write in
it's going to work for them on that given day. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's smart. It sounds like outside perspective, it sounds lazy, but it's actually super smart. Just take as much data as you have right up to the minute. I think that's really, and it's also like, I think there's a bit of like competition prep value to that too, because you're not going to know all the events going into game day. So it's almost better if they're like not thinking in the back of their mind, how am I going to strategize this? You kind of make them adapt. I love that. So let's talk a bit about the nutrition piece. I know you mentioned you kind of your athletes have specific coaches, and your priority is kind of like where's their weight off season versus in season. Are they left to find their own coaches? Are they working with partners in brute strength, or what is that? What do those relationships look like?
For most of my athletes, and I've been working with them for the majority of them since they're like 15 and 16 years old.
Yeah.
I tell them from day one, if you're really serious about this, nutrition is what's going to get you leaps and bounds over the competition.
Yeah.
Because, 4 years, and that was this talk at the time, 3 to 4 years from now, when you're going against professionals that are doing this for their career, all of them are doing it.
Yeah.
Right. It's
just
like
those 1% gains, right? Just as many
you
as you can.
Yeah. You got to do it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, I always recommend that they find a company to work with.
Yeah.
Or a coach that they trust to help with their nutrition. As far as the, their body weight goes throughout the season, it's not too concerning to me when there's no competitions within like 6 months.
Yeah.
What I am asking them at that time, and I'm just asking the questions is like, how do you feel? Where do you feel like your strength is at this time? Aerobically, and this is really the big thing is the body weight will affect their aerobic and their endurance.
Gymnastics. Yeah, true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so if I see an athlete moving a little bit slower than the competition, honestly, is really what it is. I'll start to talk to them to see if this is something that we can start to try to practice on. And it's like, here's an example. Last year, Dallin was doing the open. And I think like 6 to 8 weeks before that, I was having a conversation with him. I think he weighed like 220, maybe 225 at that time. And I was like, hey, man, I want to see us improve in our results in the open so that we know like the open we're no longer just like a games athlete, right? And it's like, we want to be really good in the open. We want to be really good at quarters and semis and so on.
Yeah.
And so we said, let's find have a conversation with nutritionist. Let's find a plan where we can slowly dial it down so that when we're coming into the open, we're lighter, we're quicker, we're more aerobic, because that's really what the open is, you know. And his strength capacity is there. Yeah. And that's what we did. And he had his best open finish yet. He had a really strong quarterfinal finish and a good enough quarterfinal finish to get him into semi. Yeah. You know, and he had a really good semifinal last year. His first time getting sixth. Yeah. And so it's that example that I use with all of my athletes, especially when it becomes like working on the tiny details so that they get the best performance, you know, the best showcase of their fitness when they need it the most.
Yeah. I love that. So then generally you're trying to see them their leanest at the CrossFit Games. If that's like the peak of their season, is that the goal?
Yeah. I don't know if leanness is kind of what we look for, you know, because one athlete could be holding X amount of body fat percentage and they're using that specific energy very well. While another body fat, like if, you know, I think of, you know, you see one, like I always think of what's that guy? Noah Olson. Yeah. Like he looks like he's like chiseled from, you know,
shredded.
And, you know, and it's like, if that works for him, great. But then you think of like another athlete, whatever, you put a name on it. Yeah. And you're like, dude, do you actually work out? Like, how did you make, like, you looking like this at the CrossFit Games?
So true.
And it's like, I mean, this person
on the floor.
You know, it's like, well, they are at like the pinnacle of fitness right now. So those it's like maybe that is it.
The under the radar assassins, everyone's like got to be afraid of. They're like, man, this guy's got something going on. The rest of us haven't figured out or something.
Yeah, man. That's you know, crazy. So it's up to that athlete and their coach to discover, you know. Yeah. My conversations might be a little bit different than they have with their coach, but you know, they'll discover and they'll figure it out. But I hope they don't. Honestly, I hope they don't.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Is it a similar approach with mobility? Are you programming that for them specifically? Is that more something they feel out, or are they paired with one of the apps that you guys partnered with anybody like that, or what does the mobility recovery piece look like for your athletes?
Yeah. So for the majority of my high level athletes, and I guess all of them, they use an app that they work on mobility. We also have, so my sister, Nicole, also works with all my athletes as well. She's a physical therapist here in town.
Oh, nice.
And she's been working with them since since day one. Yeah. So she's constantly in contact with them. She's there with us in the gym. Yeah. You know, I even had like today, I was watching one of our athletes do, pretty high percentage push press. And it was just like one arm was just a little bit leading before. Yeah. And I was like, hey, Nicole, come on here. And I was like, watch from the back. And, you know, we're watching him do his lift. And I was like, what do you think I need to do in order to test this, in order to strengthen this? And she was like, oh, well, you should probably do like build up to 8 RM on left arm with a dumbbell and then do it on the weaker arm second. Yeah. And then, then let's start to work on creating more balance. So it all, like, mobility is good, man, but I definitely think like marketing takes advantage of people. Yeah. Because sometimes it's not mobility. Sometimes it's strength and position. True. You know, it's like, obviously you got to be able to, like, there's a difference between like mobility and flexibility and then strength and position. It's like, you got to be able to know them all. Yeah. And have the correct person in place to say, okay, this is what we need to work on.
Yeah. It's true. And it's tough to get all that from an app too. I know they're getting smarter, but I don't know if they'll ever replace a human set of eyes on it.
I hope not.
Yeah. Sir, that'd be scary. Coach, they're all robot coaches across the board.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that mental piece, Matt. How much advice do you typically give an athlete heading into a competition, even the days leading up to it? Do you have mobility routines, visualization, breath work, those kind of pieces, or is that kind of left to their own?
It's understanding the athlete and knowing the words that you say is going to affect them a certain way. So it's going to create a narrative in their mind that they'll either be 100% behind and believe, and it'll, bring their confidence in their headspace up to like the highest level for game day.
Yeah.
Or they won't trust you and they won't believe you. And typically that happens with like newer athletes, right?
Yeah. They got to find out the hard way.
Yeah. But I'll tell you this much. It's like, I have somewhat of different conversations with all of my athletes. Like, the way I talk to Phil is different than the way I talk to James. It's different than the way I talk to Emma and Fee. And then in some cases, like a couple of my athletes, they're somewhat of the same people. Like,
just got to know what triggers are.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's like, you got to know what it is. But as far as like what any athlete can do in order to improve their performances, like imagery is huge.
Yeah.
Imagery and walking them through. So this is what I'll do with a lot of my athletes in the warm-up area before they're about to step on is, we talk about the event briefly, and I'm just like, walk me through your macro thoughts. And there should only be like 1 to 3 at most.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, when I'm going through here, I'm going to stick to this reps game because I know I have this coming.
Yeah.
And I have to consider that in the future. What is this going to do to that?
Yeah.
I'm going to be fast in this, so it gives me a little bit more time on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that my reps are looking like this. So I'm not because in this scenario, like for this one, a no rep could be pretty detrimental.
Yeah.
So, we walk through that and I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
Let's get out there and do the thing,
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, what do you tell an athlete immediately following an event, whether it's a good event for them or whether it's a bad event for them? And that's where it's different across the board. It's like, I'll always say this to my athletes, and it doesn't matter who it is when they have a bad event, and it happens frequently, I want them to win the game of forgetting and focusing on the next thing.
Yeah.
Because for the majority of athletes, it's not going to be, they're not going to be like, yes, this is the best finish I ever had, unless it's one that like a top 3, right? So majority, the remaining like 30, 37 or, 27 athletes that are in that week. But if you can put focus already on recovery, right? So jumping on a bike, you need to be off of your feet, getting back to the hotel, changing out of your clothes, putting on something, clean.
Yeah.
Focus imagery on the next event. What time are we going to meet up? If you got to get your body worker to come in beforehand, if you're going to be eating something before, which you probably should, what is that going to look like? How much time is it going to be? So if they're dwelling on the things that they, that were terrible in that event, those 6 things I mentioned are probably not getting the attention they need. Which turn, it's like, they're not going to get the focus and the attention to detail that they need going to the next event.
Yeah.
And that's typically what I'll tell all my athletes when they're coming off of an event that, they're not too happy about.
Yeah. I love that. I reminds me of Steph Curry and going 0 for 9 from 3 and just acting like that day never happened, just short-term memories. And so that it's just totally fresh the next event.
Yeah.
So obviously reflecting on it right after the event, that's not going to help. The next event.
And that's the big thing, man, is I tell them, look, we will have a review and reflection of this entire thing. Let's not focus too much on it right now. But I like
human nature, though. You instinctually, at least, especially if you're analytical, every part of you wants to analyze it. You just have to block yourself from doing it because it's just there's no good outcome from that. So
definitely,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
cool. You mentioned training teen athletes, and I've trained a bunch myself, and it blows my mind just because they're growing and how quickly they respond, and like their strength just happens like instantly. Just whatever you give them, they just seem to like, compared to like a 25 or 30-year-old, their stuff happens so fast. So what kind of special considerations? And I remember years ago, there was like all these, like, I think the doctor ran around training teen athletes or around certain ages, growth plates and all this stuff. And I think it's slightly changed. What kind of considerations do you make specifically when dealing with programming with teens and their kind of joint development, those pieces?
Yeah, well, I think you're spot on. I can tell you the biggest problem with teenagers right now that it took me about 5 years to discover. Once a teenager discovers a new skill, a difficult skill, they leave the one behind. So an example of this is once a teenager figures out how to do a kipping pull-up, they'll no longer do strict pull-ups. Right. When they figure out how to do butterfly pull-ups, it doesn't matter how terrible the movement is, they never will do kipping pull-ups again because all they care about is reps and finishing at this time and like accumulating all this mess. And it's like they can finally do this skill. Yeah. And what ends up happening is they start to build a foundation, like a very shoddy foundation. You know, it's like, and then on top of that, you leave a teen to do what they want to do, and they're going to destroy their body. Not when they're a teenager, because they can bounce back, as you mentioned. True. But you know, if they want to take the sport serious at the age of 18, 19, and 20, they literally have to rebuild everything. Yeah. Or they're already dealing with some nagging issues, knees, ankles, shoulders, something. Yeah. Where it's like, now thinking back, how I would work with teenagers today would be to make sure that they have a strong foundation. Yeah. I don't need my athletes, even today, like I'll program kipping pull-ups and kipping chest to bar pull-ups for my athletes for many reasons. But one would be to develop grip strength. Yeah. It's like you have these teenagers that, their grip is weak. It's like, well, you don't get grip fatigue from doing butterfly pull-ups. Yeah, true. Lat fatigue, maybe. Yeah. But there's something special about a kipping pull-up that will help develop, number one, grip strength, but number two, shoulder strength, because when you're pushing away, you have to show control within the shoulder in order to be able to move. And when you're doing your butterfly pull-up, it's like we've seen this time and time again. It's like, I'm looking at like a teenager that it looks so terrible to watch him do a butterfly pull-up. It's like, I don't know how to describe, those car dealership things that kind of like with air, they like the air and it kind of like makes them float around. Yeah. Like that's what it looks like to watch some of these teenagers do butterfly pull-ups. And I'm like, I can't look at this. Yeah. And it's like, that like the transfer energy is just going all over the place. Yeah, but it's like baby giraffe. Yeah. And so I think the reason why for me, it's been so easy to develop strength from a teen is I like to do it in a unilateral sense, right? Yeah. So single leg, single arm, tempoing them down. Yeah. I want them to build strength and position, and this has more to do with like cleans and snatches. Yeah. So I'm doing a ton of tempo with them at all times. And then I'm managing their volume. So I get teens reaching out to me that I coach I can't even tell you how many times, like James has done this to me and Dallin as well. I mean, like Emma, like all these teenagers. And now those are the ones that we know currently, like in the space that we're in right now, but I've coached like hundreds of teenagers and it was all the same combo. Yeah. Can I get more volume? Can I get more programming? And like, if I wasn't confident with what I was doing, I would give in, you know? Yeah. But I understand at this point in time, I'm talking to a 16, 17, 15-year-old. It's like, of course they're going to want more volume. They have all the energy in the world. They probably
feel pain
peanut butter. Yeah. They probably eat like 2 PB&Js all day and can like work out for 17 hours. It's like, but I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to have that conversation with them. Yeah. To me, it's going to be like this. And this is what I respond back. It goes, I'm not concerned about the amount of volume you get in today. All right. Let's talk about the longevity of the sport. Yeah. I want you doing this until you're 32, 33 as a professional.
That's like ancient to a 16-year-old.
I know. Right. And it's
like 60 years away, man.
Yeah. It's so much easier to explain that to teenagers now that, my teens are now 20 years old, 19 years old. Yeah. But back when like those guys were young, 15, 16-year-olds, I was like, dude, you got to just trust me on this one. Yeah. Like you just trust me on this one. Now it's like,
that's why you have a coach.
I'm like, well, this is what James, Dallin, and Emma did. And look where they're at. And they're like, okay, all right, I'll do that.
That definitely helps the conversation work in your favor.
For sure.
See, these guys are just qualified here. Yeah. This is what they did. Yeah. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about you kind of alluded to the season, the off season. And I think there seems to be more of an off season coming. And I think that's a lot of the games coaches I've talked to, it's like, they'd like to see it operate similar to like other sports where there is a proper off season for recovery. And you still have kind of like some of the big events like Wadapalooza and Dubai stuff kind of like stuck right when the quote unquote off season would be. How close do you think we are to an ideal CrossFit season format? And if you had the keys, if you were given the keys to whoever the new CEO of CrossFit is, what changes do you make to it?
I think it goes so far beyond what we think it is from an outsider looking in. Like, I just want to see consistency in the season, whatever they decide on. If they move the CrossFit Games to the wintertime and they decide on a location in the South for the CrossFit Games, fine. Let's just keep it there.
Yeah.
Let's keep it in the wintertime. If they keep it where it's plugged in right now, fine. Because then it allows these other events to come in and say, okay, where do we think we can get the most high level athlete?
Yeah.
Right. Because right now, I really enjoyed Rogue. But, I don't know if 2 months off of, one of the most grueling weeks of their life is enough.
Yeah. You just have to keep sweetening the pot.
Yeah. And then, in other cases, man, athletes get banged up at the games, man. Like, yeah,
for sure.
Like they are hobbling out. It's rare that you see an athlete come into the CrossFit Games and they leave and they're like, I'm just generally sore.
Yeah.
Right. Something has been going on.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is those athletes that you want to have at the next competition may not show up. But
yeah, true.
To answer your question in short, keep the season the same. If we're deciding to do it this way, semis, quarters, or quarter semis, games, keep it the same.
Yeah.
I would really like to find a system in place where it allows these athletes to do multiple competitions, like 3 or so within the year, and not have to worry about gearing up for the open, not have to worry about doing quarters. Because now what we're starting to see is like, we're starting to see the same athletes like finish so far ahead of everybody. And it's like, why should it be like, why do these athletes need to be doing the open to let the whole world feel like they're included in on this?
Yeah.
It's like, I could be utilizing that time for something so much more beneficial.
Yeah. That's true.
Or, if an athlete wanted to do another event leading into it, they could do that event and still have, a month and a half before quarters.
True.
Like, I think there needs to be something in place where it's like, I don't know, if you made it to the CrossFit Games, you don't need to do the open. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it needs to be, but it's like, why even let them do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's a delicate balance. You have the business hat piece, you have the, the whole inclusive piece, messaging and that stuff. And it's everything's a compromise, obviously. So things were different, I guess, about a year ago when you had Castro Programming and everything. And now the languaging seems to be, it's more of a collective programming, and they seem a little bit black box in how that's working, or who even is doing the programming these days. What's your take on that, and your take on Castro coming back into the fold?
I like it when it's before I say that, it doesn't matter to me. And it doesn't matter to my athletes. All right. If this is the way the programming is going to be, we're going to prepare for it. If we come into a competition or we got up to an event and we're not prepared for it, we go, oh, well, great. Now we got something that we got to get better before the next competition.
Yeah.
But coming back now, I do think it's a better idea to have, and I'm sure Dave did this before in the past. We just don't know. I think maybe. It's nice to have other people chime in, and you can decide to take their considerations or, completely avoid. But I guess this is the way I like to work, is the more questions people ask me, the better, right? Sure. Because if I don't have an appropriate answer for them, I'll be straight up with them and be like, I truly don't know.
Yeah.
But I got to go figure it out. When it comes to programming, I hope I would understand why I'm doing it, because if the question does get asked to me by one of my athletes, I'm more than happy to explain it to them. So it helps them have a deeper understanding and knowledge of it. So, if whomever is doing it or whatever team is doing the programming, as long as they have like a good purpose behind it, like in, the first year of the cuts, right? I don't think there was enough questions being asked with leading into programming. Where it's like, well, we've only tested this small piece of, fitness. And we're going to cut people already. And then now you get to get all this other test of fitness. But that was a good learning lesson, because I'll tell you what, the year, not 2020, but last year, we got a broader range. It's true. And it got extended out just a little bit more. So the necessary changes were made. I would just, when you're bringing athletes to do the absolute best, you want to have all those questions answered. Like, you want to have as minimum amount of questions being asked in the heat of things at the CrossFit Games. And you don't want to have people doubting and questioning things, but the more things you can minimize, the better. So,
I agree. The cuts is such an interesting thing, right? Because I think, wasn't there a year where Froning was 30th after day one or something insane for him? Like, he would have been cut if that's what which is just, it's wild to think about those kind of things, right?
Yeah. I personally, man, I like the cuts, because it's let's say we let 40 athletes make it to the end, like traditionally how it was, or 30, I don't know. They used to do a cut and it was just only 30 or something. We need, as a sport and as a company, we need a bigger audience. That's the only way that we can bring more money into the sport, and then we can pay these athletes more money. If you're sitting outside of the top 20, and in some cases near the end of the week, outside of the top 10, people are not viewing that.
That's true. That's so true.
And it's not, I don't feel bad for saying that, it's look at all these, look at golf, right? It's look at the cuts they're taking.
You're right.
And then at the very end, we're watching maybe at most 3 pairings. So 6 total people at the end. You think we care about who's placing 35th? Because the cameras are not on them. It's imagine the uproar of if you think of golf, imagine the uproar that would take place. They're well, we got to watch these, the people outside of the top 30. And they're what do you mean? I want to watch the top 6 go, or whoever's so making the run at the end of the day. And it's I don't feel bad. It's it's a sport. You're going to lose. Someone's got to lose. And then it's a business. Someone's got to get paid. And here's the thing is for the sport of CrossFit and for the business of CrossFit, how are they going to package this thing? And how are they going to sell it to advertisers? How are they going to sell it to media companies that should be coming on? Because like any other sport, advertisement and media companies is what's pulling all the money in. And if we want these athletes, especially, and I feel for my athletes right now, it's I want them to retire and not have to do things. They're going to do things because they want to do the things. It's
exactly.
If they want to program for people, do it because they want to, not because that's the next natural thing. It's this person retires, but follow my programming. It's
it's true.
That's kind of where it's at right now. And that's the thought, and it all comes together, man. It's when I think of longevity, it's not just injury free. It's I need to get them paid, not only is that to create winners, but I need them to be healthy so they can be doing this for a long time. Because, hopefully, and I really like the direction that they're trying to go in CrossFit. They're putting focus and emphasis back in the sport. Look, the affiliates need it as well. And that's what Castro's doing now.
That's true.
Welcome back, Dave. You're doing what you wanted to do as well. But we still need the sport to have the emphasis that it's having right now. And it's I love that Monster as a major sponsor. Are these athletes drinking Monster? Majority of them? No. It's they put water in the drinks. But again, I can tell you right now, the fans are drinking Monster. The fans are consuming alcohol. Bring those sponsors in. It doesn't have to be health all the time. It's look, balance, guys.
Money's the lifeline of any business. Get the money in however you can. I love that. So between now and the games, how do things change for you personally, for you and kind of how you're interacting with your athletes? Do you interact more? Are you more hands-on with the programming? What are the major things that change between now and then?
Yeah. So right now for my athletes, it's introducing just a little bit more volume, a little bit at a time. Most of my athletes, or I should say all of my athletes, they only do 2 sessions per day. My games level athletes. So now we're introducing 3 session days.
Okay.
I'm in there for most of their double days. When we're in normal training, I'm in there for like their first session. And the second session, it's totally up to them to get in there on their own and get it completed on their own. And for the most part, when I program it for priority, session 1 is their biggest priority anyway.
Yeah.
On top of that, we got to be hitting some of the things that we'll see at the CrossFit Games. So I still have all my athletes doing their own progressions.
Right.
None of them have the same program, right? Where they got to have their own separate program in order for them to continue to improve upon their own given weaknesses and limiters. But
so you move into more kind of odd objects, strongman pieces, that kind of stuff?
More often than not. So I'll give you an example. Tomorrow, I have 4 of my athletes. We have a sports specific piece. So tomorrow morning, we're meeting at the beach. They're going to do a 400-yard swim, a 2-mile run, a 400-yard swim. Nice. Up until this point, they've been doing all their swimming by our swim coach inside of a pool.
Right.
But it's very controlled. Like you can
open water, is a different animal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now it's sports specific. So now it's like, all right, guys, we get to do CrossFit stuff. Because for the majority of the season, it doesn't look like CrossFit. It's all interval style stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Based upon rest and, reps that I'm controlling throughout the majority. So we get more game stuff like tall rope climbs, long strapped ring muscle ups, barbells on the field, running outside. So there's probably not going to be any air runners.
Right.
But we've been doing so much air runner work that it's like, I'm fine if there is. Yeah. Now it's got to be running outside. It's got to be running in the middle of the day. We're combining, what you mentioned, odd object carry. So, yokes and farmers and sandbags and bringing them up over things. It's like, we are introducing all those things. And at the same time, we're still progressing our athletes in their given weakness. So for an example, that is like in semis, we see a couple things in there. It's like, we got to get better at this. So we got 7 weeks to progress this through until we get into the game. Yeah. And so they're all working on their own individualized progressions and at the same time getting introduced to some of the movements that we're going to be seeing at the CrossFit Games.
Yeah. I love that. Very cool, man. Let's shift into Matt's current health and fitness. Obviously, as a coach, you're getting pulled in multi directions. And there's different ways we can kind of prioritize our own health. What's at the top of your list right now in terms of like your own wellness at this point? What do your habits look like around that?
So the big thing for me is eat all my meals. Okay. As a coach, I can easily get carried away with drinking too much coffee and being in front of a computer or being at the gym and, skipping this and skipping that. So number one priority is to eat my meals, nice. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. If I can get a protein shake here and there, great. Nice. That's the easiest thing for me to make a change on. Sometimes I don't have all the opportunities in the world to get a workout in. But if I could choose a perfect, scenario, I would be inside of my gym doing it with my class. Nice. I would much rather be, at CrossFit Naples working out and like for 1 hour of my day, let someone coach me. Yeah. And this is the thing, man, is like, I love the camaraderie of being in the gym and a group class. Yeah. So it reminds me so much of being in the football locker room again. Yeah. And I love that nostalgic feeling. It's
the trash
dude, when we're we're in the locker room, it's just like, because you want to work out with your buddies anyway. So you're like, you're talking trash to your buddies. Yeah. And then the moment the coach says 3, 2, 1, go, I'm just like, zoop. Yeah. And then as soon as we're done, it's like, boom. And I'm like, back to trash talking. Yeah. And it's like, honestly, man, like I'm the guy in class where it's like, you put me in the locker, you put me in the gym, and I have to stop myself from talking when the coaches are talking. So I'm just having so much fun. It's like, it's just that's just me and who I am. But yeah, there is that. And then the last little piece here is sleep.
Yeah.
There's some times where it's like any other businessman. It's like tomorrow, like I look at it, I'm like, I'm not going to be getting a lot of sleep tonight, and that's just how it is. It's just how it is. And, on the next day I can try to, maybe during the day I can plan out a little nap here and there, but there is that. I guess, the last piece would be this is balance.
Okay.
You gotta, like, for me, man, I have to have balance in my life.
Yeah.
Because I can get so consumed in this because it's so effortless to work.
Yeah.
That I get consumed in it. So one thing that I do is I tell my athletes during the regular time, it's a little different right now, but my weekend is my weekend. Like, only get a hold of me if you absolutely are like, are about to die and you need me to like come save you.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they respect that. And I respect them for that.
That's awesome.
But it's like the only way I can come back in on Monday and give my absolute best is if I have Matt time. And it's like, and not like, and again, because look, I can be sitting at a bar talking about CrossFit and all of a sudden my mind switches and I'm like, like calculating everything and everything's coming out. I'm like, no, I'm not doing CrossFit. I'm not having it in this combo.
Yeah. I love that. Very cool, man. Well, this has been an unreal chat. I appreciate the time, Matt. What's the best place for people to link up with your content?
Yeah, man. So Instagram is going to be the easiest way. Okay. My handle is Hey Coach Matt. I've switched that thing over about 14 times, but I think I'm going to stick with this one.
Nice.
For a longer time. I always tell people this, whatever comes of our conversations that we have, you honestly, like, if you have a video you want to send me of you lifting, or if you have a question, send it to me. Right. Yeah. If I open it up, I will quickly look at it and send you a very quick tip or cue on what I believe.
Cool.
Now, if you're sending me video and question after question, I might not get to you as frequently.
Yeah,
but look, if you got something that you just need a quick answer, please send it to me. I'm more than happy to do it. I love helping people. So if you're out there listening, take advantage of it.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, again, appreciate the time. It's been a great chat. Best of luck with the rest of the season.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Healthspan Academy, and we'll see you next time. Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. This has been a fun project. We're growing in viewership every single week, and we obviously couldn't do that without you. So thank you for continuing to tune in. I really hope you're getting value out of the programming and the content. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I've been working on a book on health and longevity the last couple of years, been collaborating with my colleague, Dr. Dan Vitale, who's an expert in the field as well. And we've basically just kind of summarized the literature, some of the techniques that we found really useful in the world of biohacking, what our exercise regimen looks like, what's, cardio type stuff is going to help us live longer and healthier, mobility work, nutrition. We've covered the whole spectrum, everything that you can basically be in control of in your health and fitness kind of moving forward to help you live as healthily as possible for as long as possible. And it's available free for download. So if you click on the YouTube banner, you'll see a link to download the blueprint. It's also on our Instagram profile or on the website. You can click on 5pillarmethod.com/optimize to get your free copy of the book. And I hope you enjoy it. Hope you're keeping well. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.